Hey, everybody. Welcome into episode 151 of the Leaning Into Leadership podcast. My guest on the show today is Coach Kurt HInes. And if you don't know Kurt HInes, here's what I want to tell you about him. So Coach has been blessed to be a classroom teacher for nearly 30 years and a football coach for nearly 27 years. As not only a teacher, not only as a coach, but also as a husband, father, and grandfather, Coach strives every day to influence others and help make their lives better. Whether it's on the football field, in the classroom, or with his boundless reach on social media, his mission remains unwavering, and that is to change the lives of as many people as he can. Now, Coach and I initially connected through social media like so many of the other people that I know. And I was drawn to Coach by his incredibly powerful messages and incredibly strong messages that focus so much more on the individual, on pouring into each other than it does about football. Coach is an amazing human being. He has a brand new book out that is titled Called to Empower. Coach is an amazing human being. He's got a new book out titled Called to Empower. And in this episode, Coach and I are going to talk a little bit about the book. We're going to talk a little bit about some of his philosophies on pouring into the young people in our society. And then, because I had the opportunity, I had to dive in a little bit into his philosophies around growing the entire program from his vision through the vision collectively of the coaching staff and then ultimately down to the players that they serve. This is a fantastic conversation, folks. We also dove a little bit into the book. I chose 3 random chapters and we talked about what was in each of those chapters. I think you're going to love this episode. If you follow Coach Kurt HInes, I know you're going to be enjoying this one and you're going to catch the whole thing right after this. You know, one of my favorite pieces of social media are the connections that we get to make with people. And over the years, I've connected with people in all walks of life from all different parts of the world. And there are some who make me laugh. There are some who make me think, some who just make me shrug my shoulders. But then there are those who simply make me want to be a better human being. And my guest on the show today, Coach Kurt HInes, is one of those people. If you've ever paid any attention to Coach Kurt HInes, whether it's on Twitter, on TikTok, on Instagram, you have found somebody who's not just a football coach. This is somebody who's all about pouring into and empowering young people. And that's what's drawn me to him. That's what's bringing him here onto the show. And I know this is going to be an awesome conversation. So Coach HInes, thanks so much for joining me here on the show.
Darrin, thanks for having me. It's a blessing to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just maybe kind of orient the audience just a little bit on who Coach Kurt HInes is. So share with them whatever portion of your journey or what you're doing right now so that they have an idea of who you are.
Yeah, I'll make a 52-year long story really short. Starting with the most important for me, I'm a proud Christian. My faith means everything to me. I'm married to my best friend. My wife and I have been married for 30 years now. We just celebrated our 30th anniversary on June 4th. We have 3 daughters and 1 son and 2 grandsons. And really what connected the 2 of us, Darrin, as you know, is, my career, if you will, as a teacher and a coach. I taught elementary school, grades 1st through 4th, for 29 years now, heading into my 30th, and currently heading into my 27th year coaching high school football. And for me, and I say this often, but the great majority of our family and friends make more money than I do. But I truly feel like one of the wealthiest people alive. It's a blessing to, above and beyond the most important family, which I'm blessed to have a family that I love and adore and is the world to me. Teaching and coaching is what lights my fire. Being able to be a blessing to someone, being able to be a servant leader is what it's all about. So I know that's why we first connected, and with your introduction there, I do want to share with your audience. It's what drew me, I should say, and attracted me to working with you. Because as you know, there are a lot of publishing companies out there and a lot of different avenues you could take. And it's my first book that I just wrote that we'll get into in a little bit. But for me, it's all about people. It's about connecting with people that you want to do life with and work with and fail with and succeed with. And and just your humility and your servant leadership in your heart. And I know what you do in the teaching and administrative world to lead others to be better is a blessing. So once again, I appreciate you having me on, and I just love that we're connected.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate those kind words. I do. It's, we were talking before we hit the record button that the more we can surround ourselves with people who make us want to be better, the better we're going to be, and the better we're equipped to serve those that we have the opportunity to serve. So really, really good stuff. Go ahead.
It's funny too, because when you just said that the second time, I think the great majority of people might say that, but don't really want to be surrounded by people that will force them to be better, because that requires us to come out of our comfort zone. When you're around someone that is more optimistic and more positive and looking to serve others and bless others, it requires you to step up your game, or if not, you just feel like you're never going to be adequate enough. And I think it is a beautiful thing when you do surround yourself with people that are like-minded in many ways, but also will love you enough to call you out on your BS, to disagree with you, whether it's politics, religion, sports, whatever it is, because if not, then we're not really growing. So it's a beautiful thing when you can have that desire to be surrounded by great people and put yourself in those situations.
Yeah, for sure. And you said something in there too that just really resonated with me. And as you were talking again, it just kept going. And that's not just to succeed with, but to fail with. Certainly, I was a head basketball coach. I think you know that about me. I know you've been a head football coach for a long time, and you don't win all the time. And, you only get to keep score once a week or a couple times a week as a basketball coach or whatever. But there's so much more that takes place outside of the actual game, right? There's just so much competition that takes place both internally and within your own team, within your staff, to help grow young men and women. Obviously, I was a girls basketball coach. Of course, you're a football coach. Let's start there. I actually put about 7 things there. So we're going to figure out which of those we're going to start with. But from there, from that sense of competition, that sense of understanding and growing from both success and failure, as either a teacher or as a coach, talk a little bit about kind of that baseline, if you will, and where and how you like to take people to that next level.
Yeah, absolutely. And it reminds you of one of the chapters in my book that talks about, an apology letter, so to speak, to adversity. For years, I've always loved competition. I've always loved competing. I've always been involved in sports since 2nd grade. But for years, I thought success and failure were the two opposite ends of the spectrum. And as I've grown and matured and failed a lot, I look back at my life now, and there's no doubt in my mind that 99% of my greatest successes in relationships, in teaching and coaching, you name it, have come through facing hard times, not running from them, but facing them, and then learning and losing and learning and growing and not making the same mistakes 3rd, 4th, or 5th time. And I tell our football players all the time, so often you see young men, and we have several young women over the years I've coached that have been on our teams. They will shy away from competition and practice in fear of making a mistake or in fear of not getting it right. And I try to stress them daily, if not several times a week. We want you to fail. The more you fail Monday through Thursday, the less we fail as a unit, as a team on a Friday night. And I think that's true in life. If I'm teaching a lesson in my 4th grade classroom or installing a new play in the football field for a program, it's not going to be a great lesson every single time. It's not going to be a great drill or play every single time. And it's through challenging yourself that not only do we achieve greater success, but when we do fail, it makes us reflect on, okay, is this a problem with my students not understanding it and then I'm not teaching it correctly? Is it a problem with my players not understanding it? I was setting up a drill just 2 days ago at practice, and I asked 2 of my assistant coaches to help me out, and they both set the drill up wrong. And they came, I said, no, guys, I said, here's what I want. And they both apologized. And I said, no, I said, if you guys both heard it the same way, I didn't explain it clearly enough. And there's even humility and power in that, where they don't see a hierarchy of a head coach and assistant coaches or a principal and staff and teachers. It's, hey, we're working together. You know, and I think way too often leadership, especially lately in society, in politics, in every walk of life, someone's given a title of leadership and they slap that title on the door or on their desk or on their shirt or on their email. And they think, okay, my job's done. I have that title. Let me just watch the workers work. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. That's when we need to roll our sleeves up and get dirty and be willing to say, all right, I have this title of leader. What does that mean? It means it's a verb. It's an action. I have to go out and be an example and lead by example.
I love that so much. And it actually spurs two or three more questions. But the one that's jumping to the top of my mind, I want to go to. Over the last, I'd say year and a half, what has become, obviously, I mean, I've been living this passion for leadership for a long time, but it's gotten a little bit sharper and a little bit sharper. And over the last few weeks here on the show and on a few other people's podcasts, I've talked about this really, really sharp focus now on leadership teams and on the development of that leadership team. Now, I can't have you on and not ask you about team development, but I want to ask you about team development in two different ways. And the way that I want to go about this is going to be from beginning with Coach Kurt HInes' vision of the Coronado football team, you know, for the program. But then how do you take that and make that a shared, owned, like across the board, this is the vision for our coaching staff. So let's talk about that development of your coaching staff. You're a teacher. Great coaches are great teachers. I'm curious about the development and what you do to ensure that you have a really good cohesive unit. And then we're going to scaffold it out to the entire team. But I want to focus on that coaching staff level piece first.
I love this question. And for me, it's a perfect segue, Darrin, into what we just talked about as far as failure and successes. My first 7 years as a head coach back in Bedford, New Hampshire, when I was interviewing assistant coaches, I would sit down with them for an hour and a half, talk football. And that's it, just talk football. And what I found through trial and error was that I would hire a great number, 95% of them, of gentlemen, of men who knew the game of football. But then when we were on the field with the young men and they were making mistakes, as the young men were making mistakes, I realized that it doesn't matter to me how much football they know. If they don't know and love and want to serve people first and foremost, then this is not the program for them. So what I did several years ago back in New Hampshire, I carried it over to being a head coach for the past 6, going on my 7th year now at Coronado, or 8th year, is when I interview someone for a coaching position, I had them come in for a half an hour. I set a timer on my phone. I put my phone down so it's face down, but I set a timer and I steer the conversation anywhere and everywhere but football. I want to know what they're most proud of in their life. I want to know, hey, you know, what's one of the most, you know, successful moments you've had in your life? What are the things you're most proud of? What's one of the biggest challenges you've ever had in your life? And I really kind of get a feel of who the person is there. And I don't want to know about football right now because I feel like not everyone, but most people can teach a math lesson or a science lesson, depending on the age level, or teach a drill on the football field or a basketball court. But that pales in comparison to reaching the hearts of those we're blessed to teach and coach. So that first interview, I just talk about life. And then if I get a good vibe from them, I invite them back for the second interview. And the second interview is always in the weight room. And what I do that, and I love the weight room, but what I do there is, what I found over the years is when coaches come in to interview, and I'm sure it's the same with teachers when you were a principal, they always have the interview answers. I want to give back. I want to make a difference.
Yeah.
Everyone says that, you know?
Yeah.
I don't think you've ever interviewed someone and when you say, hey, why do you want to teach? And they say, I want summers off. You know, I like the vacations, you know, although that's
I did have somebody say that once, and I will tell you, we didn't hire him.
Yeah,
that wasn't the reason we didn't hire him. There were many other red flags, but yeah, I've actually had one person say that.
That's wild. That's wild. And that's what I find interviewing coaches. They'll say, I want to give back. I want to make a difference. What I learned over the years was that looks all very different for all of us. I've had coaches that I've had a good vibe with in my coach's office, in our coach's office. And I say, hey, can you come back next Wednesday, for example, at 3:00 for another interview? I don't say another interview. I say, can you come back to be in the weight room? And then they ask me, what do you want me to do? I said, you can just sit back and watch. You can introduce yourself to the players. You can talk to the players. You can work out with them, whatever you want. and I just observe everything they do. And I've had several coaches, not many, but several that will say all the right things in the first interview. And then when I see them the following week in the weight room, they walk right past the real heavy kid. They walk right past the real skinny kid, and they go right to the studs. And I just watch, and there's mirrors all over the weight room. So I just kind of watch, and they spend their time there laughing and talking and joking it up and whatever. And then they walk to the other side of the weight room to go see another stud, and they walk right past that young man that's a little bit undersized or way too big or whatever it is. And in my mind right there, I'm like, nope, that's not the man that he said he was in the interview office. And what happens is when I have prospective coaches come into the weight room and I see them interact with all the players, and I see them talk to the real skinny kid or a little bit heavier kid or whatever it is, for me, I'm like, that's what it's about. I want them to be engaged and invested in every young man or young woman, not just the ones that can make them look good. And then I ask them in for a third interview, and we talk X's and O's, and we talk about scheme and all those things. So for me, it is, as you mentioned, starting at the top. I have to have a strong why. I need to know what my mission is, what the culture is that I want to create. Then I need to surround myself not with yes men or yes women, because I don't want that. I make that very clear. I want coaches on our staff that are going to, not in the middle of the game, not when I call a pass play and it gets intercepted, say, hey, coach, why'd you call that? Wait till the next morning. But I want to be challenged. I want to be challenged on those things. And I have an assistant head coach. He's been part of the program. Darrin, when I took over 7 years ago as head coach, he had been there for 22 years already as an assistant. He applied for that same position and didn't get it. He could have quit. He could have been trying to undermine everything I did. It could have been the case, but he's farther from the truth. He's all in. He's a blue collar, salt of the earth, great human being. But I tell him all the time, his name is Mark. I say, Mark, keep me honest. Like, if you ever hear me say something out of character, if you ever hear me say something in our coach's office, in a team meeting room, on the field, practice, or a game that you think is not who I claim to be, please call me out on that. Because you need to have people around you that will love you enough and respect you enough to say, hey, Darrin, this is what you talked about in the staff meeting day one, but we're midway through the school year now, and you're doing something completely different, or vice versa.
Well, and that's number one, that's great leadership, being able to empower the people around you and let them know that, hey, it's safe for you to say, hey, whoa, Darrin, what are you doing here? Coach, what are you doing here?
Yes.
You want to have people around you who are like that, which I think leads me to my next question. I still want to get to scaffolding into the full team. I want to talk a little bit more about the book, but I don't want to miss this opportunity. In a lot of ways, what you talked about in there is the ego of each of the individuals in your program. And yes, you kind of went around it. So I want to maybe go a little bit deeper. And I would think, as a head coach, I wanted other people on my staff who wanted to be head coaches, right? Yep. I want, like, hey, that's part of Darrin's coaching tree. That's part of, that's part of Kurt HInes' coaching tree, right? You want to grow those people. We have an imperative, we have an obligation as leaders, as coaches, to grow those other coaches. Yeah. How do you work that balance, and what maybe does the communication look like, or how do you measure? So you have Mark, who maybe at this point isn't interested in being a head coach. He just wants to be the best assistant head coach as he can. Yep. But maybe your DB's coach, maybe he's the guy who's like, I can't wait to be a head coach. How do you balance that on your staff?
Great question. It comes down to communication for me, first and foremost. Getting to know your staff well enough on a personal level and asking those questions. What is your end goal? People have asked me for years, would you ever coach, professionally at the college ranks? And not that I think I'm that good, but I do believe I could do it. And the answer has always been no. I truly do feel called to coach the high school football level. Now, if something's placed in my heart down the road, I would pray about it and see. But I've never had aspirations to climb a ladder for me in the coaching world of coaching high school for a certain number of years and then becoming a coordinator or position coach in college, and then going from there to being a head coach. So I think it comes down to communicating with your staff and saying, what is your goal? And you hit the nail on the head with Coach Davis, my assistant head coach. He doesn't want to be a head coach anymore. He wants to, and he is one of the greatest assistant head coaches assistants I've ever had. He's just phenomenal. I have another young coach who just left our program, who's only with us for 2 years, but it was the exact same case. he wants to climb that ladder. And that's not a bad thing. He has the right heart. He still wants to be a servant leader, but he got an opportunity. He and I and some other coaches went to a coaching clinic at a community college just down the road from where we coach, and he was offered a coaching position. So the blessing about that for me, as you mentioned, is he let me know right away, asked my suggestion, like, what do you think? I told him the pros and cons, and I said, Romeo, I'm 100% behind you. Feel free to have the head coach reach out to me and call me if he wants to, which he did. I said, I wish you the best. And if it doesn't work out, the door's always open to come back. And I think that's one of the problems I see in I hate to say problems I see in leadership, because I think if we are true leaders, you understand, once again, it's a verb, and we should be servant leaders. I think way too many people who have been given the leadership title, I should say, are afraid of others becoming leaders themselves, in fear of having the team think, hey, if they don't think I'm the smartest coach in the field, they won't respect me as much. Or if I don't have the loudest voice, or some of that nonsense there. And I think it's a beautiful thing when I talk to our program, to our young men and young women, I tell them, listen, when I'm speaking, give me your full attention. When Coach so-and-so is speaking, or a trainer's speaking, or a guest speaker comes in, give them your full attention. And when you're speaking to each other, and when you're speaking to me, I'm going to give you my full attention. I think so much of leadership comes down to building relationships, whether it's with coaches or players, getting to know their why. What is their goal ultimately? And then I think great teachers, coaches, and leaders meet people where they are and help bring them to some place they never thought possible. But what I failed in my first 2 years as a head coach was I thought everyone wanted to play college football. So I was drilling, hey, do you want to play at the next level? Play at the next level, play at the next level. Obviously, I learned over the years, not only could do the great majority not have the ability to, but for so many of them, they're not focusing on there. And shame on me for trying to have them focus down the road. They need to be where their feet are. And I need to meet with them and say, what are your goals? And coach, I want to be a second string starter on varsity. Fantastic. Let me help you with that. Here are the challenges you've had in the past, whether it's football or academics or whatever. If they say, coach, I want to start varsity, or I do want to play college, then those conversations change depending on and based on the individual and what their desires are and their goals. So I think we need to, as leaders, humble ourselves and realize I can't ever assume what someone else wants. I need to ask them what they want, and then make sure that their words match their desires. Match their actions.
So there's a reason that I'm chasing this line of thought, and I've got one more question I want to still get to on this. The premise of my show has been for now 151 episodes that great leadership is great leadership. It doesn't matter the medium in which it takes place. It could be, a principal in a school. It could be a head football coach. It could be someone that's in industry. It could be somebody in the nonprofit space. It could be a law enforcement individual, whatever the case may be, right? So much of what you're talking about is the same application of leadership. It's just done at a different space. So let's take what we've just done. So we've gone from here's what Coach Kurt HInes has as a clear vision for his program to here's how we collectively work together as a leadership team, a team of coaches, to now let's take that down to your athletes, the kids who are going to play this out on the field on Friday night and every day during practice. And the parallel here is from principal to team of assistant principals to classroom teachers, or maybe that's, classroom teachers down to their students, whatever, getting that, here's what we're all about as the Coronado football program or this particular school or whatever the name of the business is really about how do we go from that vision we have here to now everybody is collectively together. And I know from listening to you for a long time to reading your book, and we're going to talk about the book in a couple of minutes, that you've got some really good, strong strategies that you use to get everybody together. So let's talk about that a little bit.
I do want to say, having taught for 29 years and coached for 27, and I say this often, Darrin, I am an expert in nothing, but I'm passionate about everything. And I think the world's overpopulated now with self-proclaimed experts and gurus who think they have all the answers. And as I tell our staff all the time, as soon as we think we have all the answers, We need to take off our whistle, hang it up, and go sit in the stands and then just watch the game. But for me, the experiences I've had over the years, the multiple successes and the multiple failures, and I'm talking about from games to championships to losing a young man that I just quit the program that I wish hadn't, or whatever it may be. I think if you want to create a culture, first and foremost, I came to the realization when I took over at Coronado High School. In San Diego, at Coronado, we have the North Island, which is the naval base. I love our military. I'm not crazy about our government, and that's both sides of the party. But I love our
Right.
I love our military. I love our country. The challenge with having the North Island naval base is the revolving door of players and coaches that come and go. So now more than ever, I realize that culture is a living, breathing organism. I never thought it was something as simple as pick this word or this slogan or this mission statement, slap it on a t-shirt, on a weight room wall, on your staff room wall. That's who you are. I knew it was never that easy. But what I've come to realize is that culture is a living, breathing organism. It's going to be cared for and nurtured and watered and pruned daily if it's going to be lasting and make an impact that goes far beyond the classroom for the teachers and far beyond, and for the students, and far beyond the field or court or rink, whatever it is for the coaches and players. So it comes down to 3 Ds for me. And I thought about this just a few weeks ago. To create a transformative culture, you've got to have a clear, how did I say it? I just said 3 Ds now. To have a transformative culture, it's going to be defined, it's going to be demonstrated, and demanded. Now, the defining part, I think most coaches, principals, administrators, business owners do. They define, hey, this is who we are. I think a lot of them fall short when it comes to demonstrating. Day in and day out, what does it look like when you are a servant leader? As a head coach, if I'm saying, guys, practice is over, clean up the field, which I do, and then I just stand back and watch them, I'm not demonstrating what selfless leadership is about. I'll say, hey, let's clean up the field or the weight room, and they see me picking up weights, picking up the ball bags, doing whatever. So I think we need to demonstrate what that is. And the demanding part is, I think, the most exciting and the most painful part sometimes as leaders, because sometimes you do realize that everyone in your boat, as it's often said, is not rowing in the same direction. So once you define what your culture is going to be, and once you demonstrate it, and that demonstrating is not a one and done, it is a daily in and out verb action, you've got to demand that everyone in your team, in your organization, on your staff is in the same boat. And when you feel like someone's not, that's the part of coaching that excites me the most, or teaching, where you pull that individual aside, never in front of other people. You don't ever want to embarrass them. Pull them aside and say, tell me what's going on. You know, you don't seem like you're fully invested here. What's going on? And sometimes they're just a punk. But what I find out is that for me personally, 95% of the time, parents are going through a divorce, or they broke up with their girlfriend, or they have a loved one pass away, or whatever it is, the challenge, the anxiety, depression that throws, or that life throws at all of us, we're all dealing with it in some way or another. You know, if you personally, not you, Darrin, but if your listeners, if you're not dealing with depression or anxiety, I promise you 10 people in your life are. You may not know it, but at least 10 people are. So I think it all goes back to relationships and taking the time to know your staff, know your players, and let them know you also. Let them see your strengths and weaknesses. Because when we are transparent, it really empowers those who are blessed to coach and lead.
You know, I think my biggest takeaway from the years that we've known each other and just listening to everything that you share is it all comes back to relationships. It all comes back to that individual connection that you develop with every one of your fourth graders in your classroom, with every one of your athletes, every one of your coaches. And that's just, I think it's just a beautiful thing. I really do. Coach, I want to get to the book. And here's how I want to approach this. So, folks, I'll tell you, the book is absolutely amazing. We'll have links in the show notes for you. Go get it on Coach's website. Go get it on Amazon, wherever you want to get it, but make sure you get a copy of this thing. So we have all these different tweets that you had shared over the years, and you pulled down a certain number and said, hey, these are ones I feel like I really want to write about. I want to talk about them a little bit. And then I want to challenge others to think about it in their own way. And that's the timeout piece in each and every one of these as individual little chapters. I picked 3, and I just randomly picked these. I could have picked any 3, but I picked 3, and I'm going to throw them at you and just let's spend like 2 or 3 minutes on each one. Just whatever resonates with you with that one. Maybe you want to talk about, yeah, oh, I remember when I wrote that one, or man, here's what really drives me on that, or man, since I wrote that, I've been thinking more about this, whatever it is. But I'm going to throw 3 of them at you, and let's just have a little bit of fun with it. So I'm going to start with number 12 in the book. Cutting corners is like cutting yourself and everyone around you.
So let me just say to your audience, Darrin and I were talking offline before we started recording. Neither of us have received a hard copy of the book yet. Obviously, I wrote it. We both read through it many times. I don't remember what I said about this one, but I'm not going to ask you to tell me. Can you remind me of the tweet one more time? Remind me, cutting corners like cutting yourself.
Is. Cutting corners like cutting yourself and everybody around you.
I'll tell you, you said chapter 12?
It is chapter 12. Yeah.
When the book comes in, hopefully sometime the next hour or so, that's going to be the first chapter I turn to. I just thinking off the top of my head now, not remembering what I wrote. I think when we cut corners, so often we think we're just, it's not hurting anyone else. It's got no big impact on anyone else. But in reality, it does. When we cut corners, we're cheating ourselves, whether it's with a diet we're trying to do to gain weight or lose weight, whether it's with the teaching style and pouring into my students or our football players. I learned this the hard way. When we lost games or lose games in football, I typically get home on a Friday night around 12 o'clock. I'll stay up till 2 a.m. watching film to be ready for Saturday's practice to break down the film with the team. And I found that when we lost, I was watching a lot more film so I could be prepared to get better. And I fell into a dangerous trap. My 3rd or 4th year as a head coach, we were winning a lot more. And when we won, I wasn't watching as much film. I was allowing the success to go to my head a little bit. And then I realized I was, in this case, cutting corners and cutting and hurting all the players and the coaches and the families and everyone else that poured into our program. I was hurting them as well because I was letting the success make me feel pretty comfortable and not be as passionate about attacking the attitude of getting 1% better every day. So I think we've got to realize that when we do cut corners, it affects all of us and all those we love around us and people that we may not even meet yet. I know for a fact you speak all the time in different places. And I speak often, not as often as you, but there are people that come up to us and say, I've been following you for years, and thank us for whatever they saw us write in a book or a tweet or a video we put out. And when we're cutting corners, we're stopping that flow of awesomeness, to take a word from you, of bringing light and clarity to them, because we're not allowing ourselves to be as great as we've been created for. So I think we've all got to start, myself included, cutting corners, because it does affect everyone around us.
That's perfect. That's almost exactly what you talked about too. So you're just consistent and true to your word, like you always are. So I'm gonna go with number 7 for a few reasons. To me, the GOAT, the greatest of all time. Say what you want about Tom Brady, probably is, but to me, number 7, John Elway, will always be the GOAT. So we're gonna go with number 7. And on this particular tweet, it's several questions with a pretty strong answer, but it's the same answer every time. It's not starting, work harder. Not happy about your GPA, work harder. Not winning, work harder. Not getting noticed, work harder. Not where you want to be in life, work harder. # control the controllables. And the reason I picked this one is I love control the controllables. I talk about it all the time. I want to hear you talk about it.
Yeah, so often in life we get wrapped up in things that we have no control over. And there should be a little asterisk at the bottom of that tweet. I'm sure there's not, that says also work smarter, not always harder. But I think so often in life, if we look back at our darkest moments and our most troubling times, we weren't putting in the work, or we weren't patient enough with the process. This book that I wrote, Call to Empower, I believe it was like a 2.5-year process. And it wasn't because the book is that long. It's not. It wasn't because it's that profound. As much as I love it and I'm proud of it, it's not that profound. But I was not working as hard or as diligently as I could or should have been in the beginning of that process. So I think, when we talk about working harder and controlling the controllables, it is, whether you believe in God or not, I think most people will believe that there's something out there larger than ourselves. Darrin Peppard, Coach Kurt HInes, we are not the be all and end all. There's something greater than us out there. And when we talk about controlling the controllables, it frees us of anxiety and stress and just worry of things that we have no control over. When we focus on the things that we can do, when we focus on, and we talked about this with our program all the time, getting 1% better, there's so much beauty in that. I think so many failed marriages or diet plans or businesses are because they're looking at the end goal 5, 10, 20 years down the road, instead of waking up every morning saying, let me get 1% better today. 1% anyone can do. And I think just mentally, like, yeah, I can get 1% better. But if you said, hey, tomorrow I want you to lose 50 pounds by tomorrow, that's overwhelming. But if you say, hey, listen, I want you to go walk a mile today. Just get 1% better by walking a mile today. I can do that. I can go walk a mile. And we stack those successes one upon the other. And we're investing in ourselves. And to go back to chapter 12, I believe you said it is, when we focus on controlling the controllables, we cut corners a lot less.
Yeah, love it so much, and that takes me right into the last one that I want to share. I mean, I could go through every single one of them. Honestly, I really could. It's really just that good, and I love that you're hitting the James Clear 1% stuff. I think that's just so super powerful, and it ties in perfectly to number 28. And the tweet is very simple: be where your feet are.
Yeah. And this wasn't something I made up. I'm not that smart. I don't remember where I read it or saw it or heard it, but being where your feet are is everything for me. You know, I talk to my students all the time. We actually do a game, Darrin, in our classroom where I have, depending on if I have 20 students or 28 students, we all stand in a circle, myself included, and I have 3 different objects, bean bags or tennis balls. And we establish the game by throwing one object to one person. And they have to remember who they receive it from and who they toss it to. And once we've established the rotation, I then start the game. I call them educational activities. I say we don't play games, we play educational activities. I start the educational activity where I toss it to you, you toss it to Jill, Jill tosses it to whoever. And we have to be successful, get all 3 objects around with no talking and no drops. And the whole focus of that game is to be where your feet are. There are so many distractions in life, things that are coming and going, that I can't be the best husband I can be when I'm on the football field. But when I'm on the football field, I can be the best leader and coach and mentor that I can be. When I come home, let me be the best husband that I can be. When I go to school, let me be the best teacher that I can be. So I think being where your feet are allows you to say, you know what, the stresses of tomorrow will take care of themselves. I'll take care of that tomorrow. Where am I right now? What can I do to make the best of each moment? And as cliche as it sounds, none of us are promised tomorrow. So when we allow ourselves to be overwhelmed by the stresses of not where we are in the present moment, we're robbing the joy of that present moment.
Excellent stuff. Oh man, folks, the book is just absolutely incredible. Called to Empower by Coach Kurt HInes. Make sure you get a copy of that. We'll have all of that down in the links in the show notes. But we've reached that point in the show, Coach, where I'm going to ask you the same question I ask everybody who comes here onto the podcast. It's the Leaning into Leadership podcast. So Coach Kurt HInes, what are you doing right now to lean into leadership?
Yeah, every day reach out to someone. I started doing that several years ago, whether it's a family member, a student athlete, whether it's an assistant coach, a teacher in your case, or an assistant principal, whatever it may be, reach out to one person a day, whether it's a phone call or just a text. I'm thinking of you. How are you? I've been overwhelmed with the responses I've gotten over the years when someone just comes to my heart and I just pick up the phone and call them. And then we have a conversation. And sometimes it doesn't even seem like it's that big of a conversation. And then a day or two later, I receive a message from them saying, you have no idea how much I needed that right there. You know, leadership, once again, is a verb. It's an action. And if we can, every single morning when our feet hit the ground, say, all right, God, use me. You know, just put me in the place to be of service to someone else. I think that opens great doors. On top of that, we are in the midst of 72 hours of my book release. So I'm excited to see what happens with that and the lives it'll touch. And my approach, I know, Darrin, we've talked about this offline. My approach with the book is the same with my social media posts. If it's on my heart, I'm going to share it. And if it reaches one person, then that's a success. So it's a beautiful thing, and I'm excited to see where the road takes us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we know at this point it has already reached #1 new release status, and I have a feeling it's hopefully on its way to bestseller status. It's a fantastic book. Folks, make sure you go and grab a copy of Call to Empower by Coach Kurt HInes. Coach, people are going to want to hear more from you. They're going to want to reach out to you. They're going to want to follow you on social media if they're not already doing that. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, it's Coach Kurt HInes, KurtHines. It's CoachKurtHines.com for our website. It's Coach Kurt HInes on all my social media platforms. I do want to share a very, very brief story. Years ago, my wife and I were heading to brunch somewhere, and I was responding to a direct message on Twitter. And we had just parked, and we weren't late or anything. And she said to me, and my wife is my best friend. Like I said, we've been married for 30 years. But she said to me, she goes, you don't need to respond to everyone. I'm like, yeah, but why wouldn't I? And I remember saying to her, like, do you ever feel it's taking away from like our time together? She's like, no, not at all. I'm like, well, then I definitely will. And so the reason I say that is if any of your listeners ever have a question or a thought, whether it's about the book or not, anything in life, please reach out. Because for me, being a part of someone's journey and their success in life and navigating through the challenges is what life is all about.
Excellent. Well, I really appreciate you coming on and joining me here on the show. This has been a lot of fun. Coach, thank you so much for joining me here on Leading into Leadership.
Thanks for having me on.
As promised, 100%. That is an incredible episode right there with Coach Kurt HInes. I appreciate him coming on the show. Make sure, folks, if you haven't gotten your copy of Call to Empower yet, there are multiple links down in the show notes for you to go get that, whether you go buy that from Coach on his website or you go buy it on Amazon. You've got an avenue to go get the book. And now it's time for a pep talk. So last week, I spent the week in Orlando, Florida, at the Jocelyn's Renaissance Global Conference. And honestly, I've been to this conference every year for the last, I don't even know how many years. I've been there every year since 2007, whatever math works out to be on that one. And I have found every year that I make new connections, new relationships, new friendships with people who are very like-minded. They are working really hard to ensure that they're building and maintaining positive culture and climate in their school and in their community. And every year I witness 2 or 3 things that just amaze me. And this particular year was no different. But what I really saw that I found so strong and so resonated with me was pouring into other people. One of my friends who I've gotten to know over the last several years was at the conference, but only for a very short period of time, like less than 24 hours. He flew in, he was on stage for about 15 minutes, and then he flew back out. And he managed to make a little bit of time just for me, for us to go for a walk about 7 o'clock in the morning, just go and spend some time together. And during that entire conversation, it was continual question about what I'm thinking about, where our business is going, about the work that we're doing. And it was all done with the purpose of serving me, of helping me grow and helping me continue to get better. Phil Boyd is an amazing human being, and I'm so grateful that he did that. But then later in the day, in his very brief time on stage, he was asked, hey, 45 seconds, what's a parting message you would have for people? And in true Phil Boyd fashion, he managed to call out 3 other people in the audience that he had interacted with during his very brief time there to talk about the difference that they're making in other people's lives. When we pour into others, folks, that's true servant leadership. That's truly what it means to help make the lives of other people better. And Coach talked about it several times during the course of this episode. The second thing that I saw that absolutely melted my heart and brought tears to my eyes was during the opening keynote. Our speaker, Carlos Ojeda Jr., Chu, paused and invited Trisha, who is a teacher, to come up on stage. And he shared a pre-recorded video that some of her students and colleagues and her sons had put together about the difference that she makes in the life of others. Chu then wrapped up the section by simply complimenting and appreciating and saying thank you to Trisha. He also then gave her a really nice gift certificate too. But the opportunity for arguably the person in the room who needed most to have that recognition, to be seen and heard and loved in front of everybody there, was absolutely amazing. Folks, I share both of these with you because as leaders, we're in the people business. I know you've heard me say that countless times, but every opportunity that we have to pour into others, we need to lean into. We need to take advantage of the opportunity that we have, that the time that we're given, that we're gifted to support other people. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't do things for yourself. You should 100% do things for yourself. But man, when you have the opportunity to just simply reach out, Coach talked about reaching out to one person every single day. That's a simple thing to do, right? And while I think I do that, I'm going to be even more intentional going forward because of his challenge, because of Phil Boyd's example, and because it's the right thing to do. So take it for what it's worth this week, folks. Take on that challenge. Pour into somebody in the way that you feel is the best that you can pour into others. Thanks for joining me here on the Leaning Into Leadership podcast. Have a road to awesome week.